Like Mercury and Jupiter, Mercury and Venus are also typically, most of the time, a rather enjoyable combination within a person's chart. Because these are two benefics, Mercury and Venus are benefics, they're gentle planets. However, they are both Rajasic planets. And that's what can get in the way, and that's what can oftentimes dampen the influence of these two planets. And why is that? Well, when Mercury and Venus get together as two Rajasic planets, they give the capacity to really deeply enjoy and explore the area of life in the house in which they're placed. So whatever house they're placed in, there's going to be a lot of focus on that house, a lot of seeking of pleasure through that house. And since they're benefics, they're going to support that as long as they're in good dignity. Generally, they're going to give that. So that's good. That's the first part that's good. But they are Rajasic, and they are very worldly planets, and they are very, in a sense, egotistical planets. In that, being Rajasic, they make the person think that they are the doer in all situations, that they are the ones making things happen. They are the ones that say, I got the best deal. See how good this occurred to me. Rather than allowing the person to realize, like Jupiter might, that this was just your karma playing out, and that was just what was meant to happen. Not that you yourself actually necessarily did anything. One of the other difficulties with Mercury and Venus is that it can give a person an insatiable appetite in that area. So whatever house it's in, figure out what that house means, and it will typically drive a person to continuously seek more fulfillment and more pleasure, worldly pleasure, through that house, which in and of itself isn't bad, as long as you know you have that tendency, as long as you know that that is a characteristic of yours. But sometimes we'll say that when you get Mercury and Venus in the 7th house, that will give one 200 spouses or 200 wives or whatever it might be. And we have to remember in this particular kind of situation that it doesn't necessarily mean that you go out and marry 200 people. It's that you've had sex with a lot of people. So we have to remember that marriage was often defined only once it was consummated sexually. So anytime that you have sex with someone, that's considered to be a marriage in a sense. That's an energetic bond that is formed between people. One way or another, whether you are aware of it or not, it's what occurs. And so this can get in the way of a person having a fulfilling relationship because, yes, they might be a wonderful lover. They might be very attentive. They might be very poetic. They might be very devotional. They might be very good at anticipating their partner's needs. But what often happens is they begin to grow bored with that thing, that person, that area of life, 7th house things that we're discussing here, and then they start looking around for fulfillment elsewhere. So it gives this Rajasic, always needing to achieve more, do something different. They're not able to just have one thing that is beautiful and really, truly focus and devote oneself to that one beautiful thing. You know, it's like the person who loves pets. So they get one beautiful cat or one beautiful fish or one lovely dog. And they think, well, I could use another one of those. And before you know it, they have a whole zoo. And sure, they love them all, but they weren't able to just really devote themselves and love just one. So we have to be cautious of this Mercury-Venus combination because whatever house it's placed in, it can give a lot of success. It can give a lot of fulfillment. It can give a lot of enjoyment. But we have to be cautious of getting too caught up in the Rajasic nature of these two planets. You know, you might have heard me use the term scab picker before. And that's what I refer to individuals who maybe they've got a really prominent 8th house or a strong Mercury-Venus combination. They just can't leave things alone. You know, they just always have to like pick at the thing. So with Mercury and Venus, you often find that to be the case. And they'll think they're doing it to improve situations or to make things better or to deepen their fulfillment, when really, with Mercury and Venus, you often stop at the surface. And once you start to get a little bit deeper, you think, oh, I need to move on to something else. So it can seem like you're just needing to pick at things and then you move on. But put Mercury and Venus in the 10th house. That's going to be wonderful for being well-known, for being charming and fun-loving. It'll make one extremely creative in their career, imaginative in their career, very wonderful at business and trade, especially if this falls in the 2nd house as well. But they'll always be moving on to the next thing generally. And that in and of itself isn't bad, as long as you are aware that that is a tendency that you have. I know an individual who has Mercury and Venus in the first house. And this person, everyone thinks that he is the most sweet, loving, charming individual that they have ever met. And he actually is, because we have that Mercury and Venus on the first house. He's also an extremely creative individual. And so when he starts to feel stagnant within wherever he is, where he's living, or his career, he needs to mix it up and move on and try something new. And again, that by itself is not bad. It's only bad when you're doing it unconsciously and you're being driven out of compulsions and desires versus just appreciating the power of Mercury and Venus rather than letting them drive you or rule you. So this makes a person extremely creative, extremely original. They like to do new things. They're often very good writers or very good musicians interested in music, and they're going to be very good at business and trade. You get an astrologer with Mercury and Venus in the first house. They're going to do wonderful at business. And so that's why we can't always judge an individual's abilities by how successful they are outwardly, because Mercury and Venus are very outward planets. And when a person can do well in business, whether they're an astrologer or a musician or any kind of business individual, that Mercury and Venus allows them to do well in business. But it doesn't necessarily always mean that they're the best at what they do. So we have to remember the skills come from another area. Now you get Mercury and Venus in the 3rd or the 5th house or the 11th house. Well, that could contribute to it quite a bit. The skillfulness as well as success in business. But anyway, Mercury and Venus, wonderful for trade, wonderful for creativity, wonderful for being charming, for having people really just love who you are in that particular area of your life. Some of the difficulties with Mercury and Venus, again, always needing to move on, find something new, so they get sort of wanderlust, I guess you will. They're not able to ever settle down. It can make a person a tendency to be too shrewd, because we have to remember that Mercury is discrimination, and Venus likes to get choices that lead to the best fulfillment. So we get these two planets together. They can often make choices that allow them to be very persuasive when it comes to bartering or trading or dealing with other individuals to get what they want. So even though these are benefics, it can make a person seem shrewd. Now that'll be stronger if we have a cruel planet or a malefic planet also influencing this combination. This can make a person tend to think too much, to think about what they don't have. It can make a person not serious enough in life, again, if these planets are afflicted, because they're not able to be discriminating, or they're not able to think things through, what's going to make this work 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So they don't seem very serious, especially earlier in life. So most of the time success comes in the late 30s and beyond, once they've had a time to settle down, to try out this Mercury and Venus, to sow their wild oats, and to let their hormones taper down a little bit. And then they're typically able to be a little more focused on what's going to bring them joy and success and pleasure over the long term, versus just following their passion or versus following a whimsical interest. And they'll also be less inclined to thinking that they're doing everything. They'll be less inclined to take a lot of credit for the success that they have. So we do have to remember that we have to balance this with the rest of the chart. So for example, the other individual that I mentioned who has Mercury and Venus, he also has a strong Capricorn influence in his chart. And so while he has this wonderful Venus, he is not the kind of individual that thinks he is the doer of everything. He has a strong sense that karma is pushing him around everywhere. So many of these things, you have to fit them into the particulars of where all the other planets are, what your ascendant is, how the Vargas are situated within the chart. But this should give you a general idea of how a Mercury and Venus combination will color the birth chart that you are looking at. Now, Mercury and Venus conjunctions, this is going to happen a lot because Mercury and Venus never really go too far from the sun, right? The Mercury and Venus are inner planets, meaning here's the sun, here's Mercury, here's Venus, and then here's the Earth. So they're never going to be too far from the sun. Whereas the outer planets, they can go all the way around, far out from the Earth and close to the Earth and so on, or seemingly so. So you often have Mercury and Venus combinations. Whenever you get Mercury and Venus together, transiting the same sign by themselves generally, if you can find that, because the sun will often be involved. This is a wonderful time to figure out what you need to do to improve that area of your life, because Mercury and Venus will give the capacity to discriminate and the capacity to make choices that will lead to higher fulfillment when they're together. When they come together by transit in a particular area of life, a house, pardon me. So when they come together by transit in your first house, well, explore, what do I need to do to improve my physical health, my personality? When they come together by transit in your second house, what do I need to do to figure out how to better manage my resources so that I'm happier about them, I'm more fulfilled with them? When they come together in the seventh house, what do I need to do to explore my capacity to relate to others, whether it's business relationships or intimate relationships? 10th house, what do I need to do to explore how to improve my reputation, how to come across as more charming and fun-loving and enjoyable to others in my workplace? 12th house, what do I need to do to explore techniques and processes to benefit my capacity to meditate and to contemplate things? Or what do I need to do to discriminate and find out what I need to accomplish to better manage my expenses and better manage my losses? Mercury and Venus, wonderful combination, usually gives a great personality to an individual, especially if it's on the 7th house, 1st house, 10th house, or if it's positively influencing the ascendant lord. You just got to be very cautious of getting too caught up in the rajasic nature of it, the can't sit still, the wanderlust. You got to tap into your Saturn again to help manage that. So these are some thoughts on Mercury and Venus.